Now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this Wednesday evening. Kind of just dive into it. Going to cover multiple issues and current events. We'll get into a little bit of the law enforcement corruption. But one thing I do want to kind of start off with, this was something that I talked about when it came to the California drought. Now, what I was saying on the previous broadcast, you know, this whole water restrictions. The government kind of created a problem, and now they're going to manage it the way that benefits them. And what I told you guys was, watch. Big business and all that, the big corporations won't have to worry about it. They will continue to use up the water reserves. Where it's going to affect you is the individuals. The individuals will, the everyday person out there is going to be the one that is affected. And I came across this article out of the freethoughtproject.com. California residents fined $500 a day for long showers while big business gets special treatment. Did I not call this? It says here, Los Angeles, California. On Saturday, California Governor Jerry Brown, Democrat, appeared on ABC's This Week program, making what can be described as nothing less than Orwellian statements regarding emergency measures to be enacted by the state to combat potential water shortages. This executive order, this is a quote now, this executive order is done under emergency power. It has the force of law, very unusual. It's requiring action and changes in behavior from the Oregon border all the way to the Mexican border. It affects salons, it affects people's, how long they stay in the shower, how businesses use water, Brown said. Brown went on to address enforcement of the new executive order, stating each water district that actually delivers water to homes and businesses, they carry it out. We have a state water board that oversees the relationships with the districts. Hundreds of them, if they don't comply, people can be fined $500 a day. Districts can go to court to get a cease and desist order. The enforcement mechanism is powerful. In a drought of this magnitude, you have to change that behavior, and you have to change it substantially. California's Agriculture and industry is the largest in the country, receiving 46.4 billion for its output in 2013, according to California Department of Food and Agriculture. Although the industry consumes 80% of the state's water supply, it accounts for only 2% of the state economy. According to the Public Policy Institute of California, California agriculture is also responsible for 69% of the nation's commercially available fruits and nuts, according to the California Department of Food and Agriculture. Quote, it's striking that his executive order refines restrictions to the urban sector that consumes only 20% of California's water and leaves the agricultural sector, which consumes 80% of the water, untouched, at least for the moment, said Mark Hertzgaard, an environmental journalist and author who lives in San Francisco. You can't leave 80% of the problem off the table. The large question of why only individual citizens are bearing the burden of the new water restrictions, while big business is allowed to continue unabated with business as usual due to the emergency order having no effect on them, remains to be answered. High water use industries such as Nestle, which bottles over 200 million gallons of water per year, and frac mining, which uses 70 million gallons per year, are both exempt from the new California water restrictions. Guest host Martha Radatz highlighted for Brown that there's more water used for almond production than is used by all residents and businesses in San Francisco and Los Angeles combined, as the almond industry uses over 1.1 trillion gallons of water yearly. Quote, in an anemic response, Brown stated, farm workers who are very low end on the economic scale here are out of work. There are people in agricultural areas that are suffering who are providing food, adding, they're not watering their lawn or taking long showers. They're providing most of the fruits and vegetables of America and a significant part of the world. Brown promptly skirted the question and instead reiterated that farmers will be allowed to continue with the same use of water as prior to the restrictions, while California residents will be forced to curtail their water usage under government threat of force. And this article goes on, but this is what, I was warning of. Basically, when people can't adapt and can't, sustain their lifestyle, it's going to drive a lot of people more into the city. If you can't keep up your lawn, so now you have a mud pit, your home value diminishes. People are going to end up losing their butts off in California when it comes to their value of their home. Also, what this also will do, it'll make it a lot easier for fires to encroach on people's homes and property. I think that if you start looking at a lot of things that go on in California with the environmental movement, I think a lot of people are unaware of how they're being used. And when you look at some of these organizations and how they link back to the United Nations or, the world organizations linked to the United Nations, and you understand what Agenda 21 is, you might see a bigger picture. And it's one of those things where I just see it as becoming, well, we want this land to be used for this, so we'll just basically make it unbearable for people to want to live here. The only people that will be able to stay are the poverty people, the people that they don't have any funds to go anywhere else. They're kind of hanging on by a string. Now, honestly, even though you can't really convince a lot of people to do it, whether they be in a good position or a bad position, but sometimes you have to just get out of there. But, you know, they're hanging on by I'd be one of those people that I would be like, well, you know what, I'm just going away. I don't care if I don't have any money. I'll figure it out. I'll bust my butt. I'll make money, you know, whatever. But they'll have a job because all the surrounding area will be fracking. And the agricultural thing, that's the iffy thing because they have restricted a lot of farmers and parts from being able to pump water. There's parts of California that were really green farmland because they were able to bring in water and they had to shut them down. I would think that you're probably going to see more mining or fracking and it would be one of those things. I think you're going to see the outer parts of these big cities in California. Again, California seems to be a test ground for a lot of these control mechanisms, and we know that to push Agenda 21, part of that was to work more at local and state levels rather than United Nations with the U.S. government. You know, the United Nations already got our national parks, so it's one of those things, though, that you're just going to see little things that are going to make it very, very unattractive to want to remain or stay in California. And I can almost guarantee you that home values are going to be dropping. Even if the you know, we see more water, the home values are going to drop. People are not going to trust that they're going to be able to have water. They understand that big business will get it, but you yourself might not be able to take a shower. Me personally, I take a little longer showers than even I would like. Bad back, one of those things. People are going to get fined again. It says here $500 a day for long showers. So good luck out there in California. Now, and we know the smart meters are going to play a pretty crucial role in that. Now, I did want to get onto this article here. This one from copblock.org. Officer is arrested after video proves he murdered suspect. And this is going around on social media quite a bit right now. And there's a video here, but it says here the video above was captured by a bystander and shows Michael Slager, a North Charleston police officer, shooting Walter Scott, who was wanted for failure to pay child support, in the back as he ran from Slager. Of course, Slaughter accused the dead, who can't speak for themselves, of taking his taser and attempting to use force against the officer. But all that was clearly fabricated. In an even more shocking twist, it seems Slaughter has been arrested, according to Carlos Miller, founder of Photography is Not a Crime. The video is so flagrant that Slaughter's lawyer immediately dropped him as a client, showing Slaughter shooting him in the back from at least 40 feet away before calmly walking to him as he speaks into his radio, informing dispatcher of shots fired. North Charleston Police Chief Eddie Driggers also wasted no time in arresting him, calling a press conference today to make the announcement. According to the Post and Courier, the footage filmed by an anonymous bystander shows the end of the confrontation between the two on Saturday after Scott, who had a warrant out for his arrest, ran from a traffic stop. It was the first piece of evidence that could contradict a statement that Slaughter released to the public through his attorney. SLED spokesman Thornberry said Tuesday that he could not confirm whether the agency has the video. All I can say is that our investigation is continuing, Berry said, and it would be inappropriate for us to discuss any specifics at this time. Attorney David Ayler, who released a statement on Slaughter's behalf earlier this week, said Tuesday that he wasn't representing the officer anymore. I'm no longer involved in form or fashion, Ayler said. Slaughter has said through Ayler that Scott had wrestled his taser from him during a struggle. The officer felt threatened when he fired, his attorney said. Thankfully, this bystander was filming this jackbooted thug, otherwise he would have gotten away with cold-blooded murder. I'm extremely happy this officer will face the consequences of his actions, though I'm not sure the justice system will provide true justice. But we should take a moment to realize that this happens all too often. Most of the time, planting a gun or having other cops back your story is enough to justify a police officer killing someone, as Joseph Schulcher has lighted here at Cop Block. But when you catch them lying with video, even the thin blue line has cut ties with you. And they'll keep up with more information. Copblock.org. Check them out. That kind of brings me to a clip I got here from We Are Change. Luke Radowski talks to Grant and Carlos of Pinnack, which, if you don't know, that's for Photography is Not a Crime. He interviewed him down in Miami when he was down there. And they discuss, ways that they have been able to successfully expose things. And Pinnack does provide quite good information. So does copblock.org on ways to really hold law enforcement accountable. But they've created something that I think, because Pinnack actually goes after, they request public information all the time, so I think they are more than just filming, and they have a pretty diverse organization there. But let me play this clip here from We Are Change, wearechange.org, We Are Change on YouTube.
Radowski of wearechange.org here in Miami, Florida, and I am joined by Grant and Carlos of Pinnack. Photography is not a crime. Now, what I like about Photography is Not a Crime is that these guys not only report on just the craziest abuse of power and authority on their website, but they also do things very proactively. They go after public records. They go after and get the contact information from anyone that violated the law and abused their power, and they make sure that they hear the voices of the people. They not only have successful stories, but they also will show you how to do this and give you a quick tip on how to do this in this video alone. Now, Grant, there's a story that recently came out here in Florida. There was a shooting that was investigated. You guys heard something. Give me the full story, what happened here, and what you guys were able to do.
Well, this is a terrible, terrible instance of cop-on-cop violence. It happened in West Palm Beach, Florida, at about 4 in the morning. A rookie Broward Sheriff's officer was leaving a establishment of gentlemen's club, and around 4 in the morning, fired shots at a very busy intersection, nearly hitting several of his brother police officers, who then initiated a felony traffic stop.
So what did you guys hear originally? What was the little bit of information you got, and what were you guys able to find out?
Well, our original tip was that there was this felony traffic stop, but there was no arrest made, and that it was because he was a police officer. It turned out that this Broward officer, Eric Stapleton, was given a courtesy ride home rather than a ride to jail for discharging his firearm illegally and nearly killing a couple of police officers.
So what did you guys do, and what was the conclusion?
Well, Carlos over here wrote the story, and our investigators doggedly followed up with internal affairs of both counties, and eventually the district attorney in West Palm Beach did file charges, and they conducted an arrest of the Broward Sheriff's officer who fired the shots.
Which shows you what happens when you follow up on information, because you had very little information coming into this about just shots being fired at a traffic stop and no arrest being made. You guys investigated it, and then you were able to hold the officer responsible when they were trying to cover everything up, which just shows you what happens when you do just a little bit of digging, which these guys are doing. Carlos also does a lot of investigating. You saw a story once on a Facebook page of a cop just slapping some guy. Can you tell us the story and the result that happened when you guys kind of investigated it and went into it fully?
Yes, Luke. This was in Saratoga County. It was back in November where a Saratoga County deputy pulled over he had these two kids, these two teenagers detained, and he wanted to search their car because he saw a gun in the car. They had bought the gun legally, and the teen did not allow him to search the car. The deputy ended up slapping him. The other teen ended up recording it, put it up on Facebook. It came across my timeline. It was 3:30 in the morning. I wrote about it. I put it up on Photographers in a Crime.
How many views did it have, that?
About 40, about 35 views on Facebook. By the time I woke up again at 7:30 to walk the dog, I had liked their page because we put their the contact information of the sheriff's department. We put the Facebook page with their phone number. Our readers started calling the sheriff's office. They started commenting on the Facebook page. By 7:30 on a Saturday morning, he had been suspended without pay. Now, that does not happen normally. Suspended without pay, we always hear about cops getting suspended with pay. He was suspended without pay. 2 days later, he was arrested. He has been fired, and I think he had pleaded guilty, except he got off without. I think he was on probation or whatever. But the fact is, he is no longer a police officer, no longer a deputy, and he basically was a cop for almost 2 decades, and he's no longer a cop. So.
See, that's why it's very important to not only investigate all these police cases, but also let the public know where they could contact them and raise their kind of rage kind of against them and be able to express themselves on how wrong their actions were. I remember when I was arrested just a few months ago in Copenhagen, Denmark, the only thing that got me out of jail was people calling the embassy, the consulate, the police precincts, because they were trying to say that I had drugs on me. I had no drugs on me in any way, shape, or form, but the Bilderberg Steering Committee had me arrested, had me set up, had me in a jail, and then they had to release me without charges, mainly because of you, the audience, calling and just, demanding to know what happened to this investigative journalist who was arrested for no reason at all. And they made up the laws, and a lot of times they do violate it. But one of the things that I really appreciate about you guys is a lot of the media outlets always break a story, and then they totally forget about it. You guys continue investigating it, and you guys also let the audience know where they could actually contact the people who violated people's rights. So you guys are doing an excellent job on that. But can you talk about just about your media outlet? Photography is not a crime, and where do you kind of differentiate yourself when it comes to the other media outlets that are there?
Well, photography is not a crime isn't just journalists, but it's also composed of activists. And what you're talking about, where we post these people's information, that's where we direct people power from the internet, off the internet, to get results. And not every media outlet wants to do that. Carlos?
Well, the First Amendment gives us the right to petition the government, and that's what we're doing. We're doing it in a more modern way where people can do it on the internet. We're listing public numbers. We're not listing their home numbers. We're listing their public numbers where they work at, and people are basically telling them how they feel, that we're sick and tired of this abuse of their power. And they don't appreciate that because they're so used to people. They're so used to people doing whatever they want, and the media just basically allowing them to do what they want. We're going to remind them that we are paying attention, and we're also teaching people how to obtain public records because that's the only way to keep government transparent.
And, I mean, you see this logo here. This is more than a logo. This is the badge that every citizen journalist wears. This is all you need to be a journalist. This and the First Amendment.
Well, all you need is the First Amendment. It would be great if you had this shirt, but all you really need is the First Amendment and freedom of the press.
You need this shirt, too,
yes.
right here, this shirt.
But one thing that I really find just amazing is the kind of difference you guys are able to make by reinvestigating cases. I know there's another case happening with a teacher, and as you guys described, that there's many layers to this corruption because a lot of times when officers or authority figures or even teachers do something wrong, they usually get another job at another district. Can you tell us some of the kind of troubles and kind of facets that you guys have to face when you're exposing this to make sure people really do get held accountable and not just kind of a slap on the wrist like we see symbolically done?
Well, there's layers to the government and there's layers to PENAC. And, I mean, I write a lot of stories. We got people who write stories. We also have another layer we call our public records investigative team. And these guys are in the background. While I'm writing the stories, these guys are doing all the public records requests, and they're pushing hard to get these requests because it's not just a matter of requesting the records and you get them. No, you have to kind of push them. You have to threaten to sue them. You have to be persistent. And we have a lot of this going on in the background. So while we're moving on with the stories, these guys are still working on the stories. For example, the case in Florida where a 12-year-old girl was suspended for recording a teacher who was bullying another student. The teacher was fired. The student was suspended for 5 days because they're claiming the teacher had an expectation of privacy. She really has no expectation of privacy in a public school classroom. And we put her phone number up there. We put the phone number, not her, but the phone number of the district, school district. And within hours of the story being published, the suspended was lifted. And now we're looking into getting the emails of the conversation between the school district and the school and how they came to the decision to lift the suspension when they were so convinced, when they were so adamant about keeping the suspension on the books. Yeah. So stay tuned for that. And that's what, we have to always understand that all these conversations they're having through email, there's a lot of stuff that is available through public records. Learn your public record laws in your state and use them because that is the only way to keep these people transparent.
And let me just say, it's never as simple as just requesting a public record. Unfortunately, there's no standard form for requesting a public record. However, each state also has its own public records law. In the state of Florida, we have an often replicated law called the Sunshine Law. And as an example, out in Missouri, they also have a Sunshine Law, although it's not quite as strong as the one in Florida. Well, in late December, there was a police killing in a town nearby Ferguson called Berkeley, and it was reported on by the national press. Well, the national press moved on the day afterwards because there was a video that was cropped and it was stopped early, and it seemed to show enough that the national press could forget about it. Well, we continued to investigate it, and we're still investigating the story because nobody else would go and even bother to find out which officer committed this police homicide or really anything else. And the department announced that the case was closed at the end of December and then reopened it so they could deny our public records requests.
We reopened when we started making public records requests. We were asking for the full video of the shooting of the young man that they shot. They were saying
his name was Antonio Martin.
Right, Antonio Martin. They were saying they're not releasing the video out of respect for the family. His family actually wants this video released. And the reason I believe the media did not follow up on it was because they were just after the Ferguson eruption, and they didn't want to start another one, so they were just going to let that one go. But we want transparency, we want honesty. If it so happened that this kid actually pulled a gun on this officer, well, then let's see it. Let's see the truth, and we'll just see it. But, if the cops are not releasing the full video, then it tells me that they're not releasing the whole truth, and there's something to hide there. and we're still pursuing that. But suddenly the case was closed. After they announced to the media, they called a press conference. USA Today, Washington Post, they all reported the press conference saying the case was closed. Move along now. And we called, hey, well, the case is closed. Can we see that video? Oh, well, we reopened the case. It is still under investigation, which, tells you that tells us that there's something they're trying to hide.
Well, it's pretty funny because Missouri is the show me state. And their whole goal in government transparency is don't show me.
Yeah. It's pretty ridiculous to see a lot of media outlets just cover kind of, violence as it is, but then just drop it and not really go back to it, not really properly investigate it, or even sometimes let the people know what officer or what teacher violated the law and abused people. Like this teacher, if her name was not public, if people weren't able to voice their concerns to the school directly, she probably still would have continued working. Or now, if people don't know her name, she could probably get another job and then keep abusing kids like she did.
Her name has not been released, so we're still trying to find her name because the local media did not obtain her name. They just basically let it go. And, what happens is, it's like cops. They get fired from one job, as this teacher was fired, and they go on to another job. And you know what? And she has the right to look for another job. People have the right to hire her, but we have the right to know who's being hired, especially if she is a public official. And as parents, they should have even more of a right to know who is teaching their kids. Yeah. So,
even as an employer, you don't want a teacher who abuses kids to work as a teacher again in your school.
And the same issue applies with these police officers who are involved in on-the-job homicides. This gentleman, Andrew Wusthoff, nobody would have even known that he was the policeman who committed this police homicide unless we had not caught it, because we caught it. He was listed as the victim in the police report.
Right. We published that, and then we actually got a lot of threats from cops and people threatening us. No one never said, no one never denied that was not his name. It was all confirmed basically when we started getting these threats. But that's how it goes. I mean, if he shot this teenager, whether it was justified or not, then his name should be public. That's all. If it was justified, hey, more power to him. He has the right to defend himself. But if it was not, then we have the right to demand questions and demand answers. That's what we're all about.
Exactly, and hold people accountable and make sure that they hear people's outrage with what's happening so we could actually stop it at the core. And that's extremely important. That's what these guys are doing. Can you tell us more about just about the kind of public records that you guys are trying to go after, but most importantly, how you're trying to teach other people to go after those public records as well?
Yeah, we're going to continue educating people. We're going to start creating more of a platform where we can educate other people. But right now we have a team of public records investigators who, they basically, when I publish a story on a cop, who did something bad, which is like every day now, we ask for their internal affairs records. We look into their background. We want to find out how many complaints they've had against them. Because a lot of times these cops who, it's not an isolated incident. They're not one bad apple. These are people who have a pattern of abusing their power, and they're always allowed to continue doing their job because cops protect other cops. So we want to see their internal affairs record to see if they have a history, and if they do, we'll put it up there.
This Uber incident is a great example. There was an an incident where a cop berated this Uber driver in New York City, and it went completely viral. And the officer's name is Patrick Cherry, and nobody realized that this guy had 10 prior citizen complaints, most of them for anger management issues, until the story broke. And then instead of going to the public information officer, which is what most news outlets do, because they're kind of dependent on these police to give them the story, our investigators went to the Internal Affairs Department. That triggered an investigation. That's where we found out this gentleman's information. And then we later published that online so citizens could directly petition him as a member of their government.
Exactly. Excellent work that these guys are doing. Photography is not a crime.com is the website. Definitely check it out. When I've been arrested, these guys help me out. And if you get arrested, these guys will help you out too. So get in contact with them. They're there for you. And definitely check out photographyisnotacrime.com.
It's always welcome in Miami, Luke. Thank you.
Okay. Now, we have a lot of issues with our justice system, and law enforcement has been allowed to run rampant. And we've also seen people that have tried to do the right thing that are punished. And we see more of both of those all the time, every day. And with the internet and the free flow of information, it's really hard to hide it anymore. Law enforcement are getting caught. Problem is does the justice system act on behalf of the people or law enforcement and the government? And too often it weighs towards government abuse. It allows for it. They come out with some ridiculous argument to justify what they do. And then we also have where people are jailed that try to do the right thing. Many of you remember Eric Garner's death. Man in prison. This coming from the freethoughtproject.com. Man in prison after filming Eric Garner's death, refusing to eat rat poison found in jail food. New York, 22-year-old Ramsey Orta, the young man who filmed the NYPD killing Eric Garner, was arrested shortly after on trumped-up charges. He has since been locked up at the notorious Rikers prison in New York. Immediately following the killing of Eric Garner, Orta was stalked and targeted by police. They allegedly scrutinized Orta's daily life until they were able to find something to charge him with. Eventually, he was confronted by police who illegally searched him and arrested him for the nonviolent crime of carrying an unregistered firearm. Orta had expressed concern for his safety after his arrest because he was sure that the police were retaliating against him for exposing what they had done to Eric Garner. While in prison, Orta has taken seemingly drastic measures to ensure that he is not killed by the gang he witnessed murder Eric Garner. Orta has been refusing to eat as he fears that guards may poison him because he is a high-profile opponent of police brutality. Sadly, Orta's fears were well-founded. While he has been behind bars at Rikers, dozens of other inmates have reported traces of rat poison in their food, a claim that was actually recently admitted by prison officials. It was reported by the New York Post last month that 19 different inmates were denied medical testing after bluish-green pellets were found in their food. The prison admitted that these pellets were rat poison, but failed to give the inmates medical attention and failed to offer any kind of explanation as to why the prison's food was tainted with rat poison. Orta has been refusing to eat, so he has not ingested any of the food laced with rat poison and is not one of the 19 inmates in question. However, his health is deteriorating and he is becoming malnourished due to lack of food. Speaking in an exclusive interview with the Free Thought Project, Danette Chavis, organizer and founder of National Action Against Police Brutality, pointed out that Orta's search and arrest were completely unjustified. It's imperative that each and every one of us watch this case closely for what is being done to Ramsey Orta is being done across the United States to those who would resist the oppressive forces of police. When police have to reach back into the history of a person to justify their actions of today, something is very wrong, for the actions committed by the person at the time of arrest should be sufficient. And when it isn't, they ought not be charged with the crime, because if history is enough to convict, the United States itself is guilty of crimes unable to be enumerated here. Chavez said. Orta's situation is dire. There is only so long that a person can go without adequate nutrition. It has now been proven that the food in prison cannot be trusted, not for your average inmate, and especially not for controversial ones. His bail has been set at $16,250, and his family cannot afford to pay it. This is truly a life and death situation. So his family has started a fundraiser to help with the legal fees. Unfortunately, however, the campaign has only raised a fraction of its goal. I have a link. It says here, please consider donating to the fundraiser if you have the means, even if it's a few dollars. Orta was not the only person to be targeted for filming the Garner murder either. As we reported last month, Taisha Allen, who also filmed the death of Eric Garner, is speaking out and saying that her involvement with the case has put a target on her back with the NYPD. You can find that at the Free Thought Project. I think that there's definitely a clashing and a turning point coming. And the problem is with what we've seen with a lot of things going on in Ferguson and other places, the ones that seem to be organizing some of these have alternative agendas, and there's some elements that have come out in a lot of these protests that should have most people at attention when it comes to these elements being involved, because it's not the fact that they're there, it's the fact that they're steering it. That's where it becomes dangerous. The fact that they're also using it. They allow these elements to come in to cause disruption and to, divert the conversation using mainstream media. So what the true grassroots people out there that are really just trying to, change their community are basically being played off as pawns in a bigger agenda with those elements there. And when they play into those elements and they go along with those elements, the message gets lost, and the viewpoint of the nation through mainstream media becomes a manipulation game. And the things that these groups are attempting to do with these protests is not going to bring more liberty. Just their version of what the control mechanisms should be used for. Excuse me. I seen this out of Liberty Beat. I just kind of wanted to mention it. Says here, Liberty documentary aims to tell story of American liberty movement. A new documentary aims to capture the recent history and possible future of the American liberty movement, influenced and inspired in part by former presidential candidate Ron Paul. Liberty is a documentary focused on American libertarian movement from the 2012 presidential election to the current presidential race and beyond. The film will feature interviews with a variety of libertarian activists, journalists, thinkers, and candidates. Liberty is also expected to explore the various schemes and factions of libertarian thought that have emerged since 2012. The film is being produced by Collective Minds Media, the Conscious Resistance Network, Uncorporate Media, and the Liberty Movement Radio. So, just something I wanted to mention there. Okay. Now, I kind of wanted to cover one thing. Since talked in previous broadcasts about the whole freedom of religion and do people have the right to discriminate? Well, Adam Kokesh took to the streets with this question, and this is what happened.
My name is Luna. I live here in Santa Monica, and I'm shopping.
Awesome. Have you heard of Indiana's new religious freedom law?
No, I have not.
It's a new law that's causing a lot of controversy because it allows people to discriminate against homosexuals in their business. So, like, if they're coming in, and you've heard the wedding cake thing, like people refuse to make wedding cakes for gay weddings because of their religious beliefs, this law protects their ability to discriminate for whatever reason. If it's, that they're racist, if they're homophobic. Now in Indiana, they're allowed to discriminate. A lot of people are very upset about this. What do you think about a law like that?
I am actually against those laws because this is how I believe. I just am, yeah.
So the government's good for stepping in here and making sure that people don't be racist or homophobic, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what would you call someone who has a business and says that, like, certain people for whatever reasons can't come? What does that make them?
That's horrible. But I have no comment on that.
Okay,
so.
that's fine.
But that's horrible. I mean, they cannot do that. This is, discrimination. I mean, yeah, for sure.
Do you have any friends?
Yes, of course.
Would you describe you have a close circle of friends?
Yes.
And can you tell us, like, what those people are like?
They mix. I have gay friends. I have normal friends. I have I don't know. I have so many friends. They are different people. They're awesome.
How would you describe how you choose who you make friends with and who you decide you don't want to be friends with?
Usually, the people you just wants to be friends, they just kind of same as you are, and you attract each other. And I prefer safe, drama-free, normal people. Like,
so you want to avoid conflict. You want people that are like you, that are similar to you, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So what if I came in and said, hey, you know what, Luna? I don't think you have enough black friends. I think you might be racist. So I'm going to pass a law that says you have to, in your circle of friends, you have to have a certain number of black friends. In fact, you have to be friends with that guy and that guy and that guy right now. And if you don't, you're going to go to jail because we made it against the law for you to not do what we want, because we don't want racists or homophobes. We want to make sure that you adhere to the social standards of who you associate with. Would that be a good law? Why not?
I don't think there is no such a law. Can be like you choose for who has the right to choose who to be with.
Well, that's not true. And before this law was passed in Indiana that you don't support, people had to be, accept whoever came to them as customers. And basically, if they didn't want to associate someone for like the same reason that you don't want certain people to be friends, right? You said you didn't want to be friends with people who would cause drama, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be friends with people who are not similar to you, at least at some level, right?
Yeah.
So right now, that's the way the law is for businesses.
Now, I want to correct something there. Here in Indiana, how it's been for as long as I can remember, you could deny service to anyone. basically, as long as you didn't give a reason. You could basically just kick someone out of your establishment. Now, in these days, I'm sure now it would bring a lawsuit. I'm sure it has in cases, none that I'm aware of, but here in Indiana, people are always kicked out of stores for just being idiots, running around yelling, but basically, you if you gave no reason, you could just call the cops and have people removed. Cop goes, "Why are you kicking them out? I don't want them here." And cop would just take them out. Now, times are changing, and I just kind of wanted to correct that, but, nowadays, with the groups that are out there, I'm sure that would have definitely brought a lawsuit if it was blatantly done in a discriminatory way. But back to the clip.
Is that if you want to discriminate for whatever reason, if you're a Hooters and you don't want to hire a male waitress, right? Because it'd be kind of silly, right? Or if you run a strip club, you can't have if you don't want to hire a dude, or you don't want to hire a woman because she doesn't look good naked, right? You get to discriminate on those grounds, right?
Yes, of course.
But for a lot of things, there are laws now that prevent you from being able to discriminate based on your personal preferences. So how is it that you support you having a right to do something, but people in Indiana, you don't support their law and you think their government should stop them from discriminating?
I correct myself. I don't.
So you've changed your mind. You see the comparison now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Now
I'm sorry. I definitely support those people.
Well, we don't have to support people who are racist and homophobic, right?
No.
But we also don't have to use violence of government against them, right? So I want to share this with you because it's really important. Now that you've realized this, you might be going, "Oh crap, why am I taking the side of these homophobic racists?"
I first was kind of confused, but yeah, that makes sense.
So the answer here is that we can address homophobia and racism better than government can with nonviolent solutions by raising awareness and making sure that people know that if there's a business doing bad things, you shouldn't wait for the government to pass a law, right? That's not very effective or efficient. You shouldn't tell the government to, on your behalf, go in and point guns at the business owner to tell them what to do. But if you don't like what they're doing and it's really offensive, you should tell everyone and make sure that they go out of business. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Luna. I really appreciate it. Hey,
Sorry.
No, that was great. No, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to put people on the spot and challenge their beliefs and make them think.
Adam Kokesh on YouTube. When we look at free market solutions, that's kind of what he's talking about, is a free market solution. A free market solution is also a way that the non-GMO movement is really growing. We have a portion of it that focus so heavily on we need to label GMOs. We need to label GMOs. But we forget about how much power we've already have and how much more power we could have if we focused our energy in the right direction and supported the people that are putting out the non-GMO food, the people that are giving you access to the non-GMO seeds. And, one of the people I partnered with is My Patriot Supply. And, they document all their stuff. It tells you on the package, lot numbers and everything, where it came from. It's pretty incredible what the free market has been able to do. And I think that we go, oh, we're so powerful as a group that we need to attack the GMO sector by making them having government force them to label things, which I think it would be awesome if all GMO stuff was labeled. Don't get me wrong, it'd be awesome. But I think the more effective way is to make it more profitable. If the farmers, if the food manufacturers really actually had to start being more open and providing consumers with what they really want, which is real food. Now we always hear all this hype and scare about, GMOs will feed the world. Well, the problem is a lot of people have, in a lot of areas of the world, have lost the knowledge or the ability or both of how to live off of the environment that they're in. See, we've gotten a lot of areas used to us or China producing rice and corn and wheat. And they get tons of this stuff delivered, food aid, world aid. They don't produce themselves. Then you have instances like in Libya, where they go in and bomb the water supply that Gaddafi built that was supplying the farmers in the farmland to give them the ability to produce their own. And I'm sure we'll drop in a whole bunch of food aid at some point in time. That we'll leave it in chaos where they don't have this big waterway anymore. They can't produce food like they used to. Famine and everything else strikes the area, and we have a situation where we can produce all natural, healthy food in abundance. And you can do that even in your environment during droughts, during wet times, because there's always certain types of crops that will fare better. And when you're diverse in what you plant, it makes it a little bit easier. Okay, give me a second here. Now, I have an article here out of the Foundation for Economic Education, and this one's by Jeffrey Tucker. I actually have two articles here, one from Foundation for Economic Education and one from tucker.liberty.me. But this one here, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Libertarians. Okay. It says here, what does it mean to be an effective advocate of liberty? It means to love what you do and adopt sustainable patterns of thinking and living that contribute to making the world a freer place. Sustainability is key. Most of today's attacks on freedom lovers include a dismissal that libertarianism is an ideology for idealistic or maybe deluded kids, not one for adults. Sure, you can feel enraptured by the writings of Bastiat or Rand or Rothbard when you are in high school or college, but once you get into the real world, they say you mature and give up the illusions of a freer world. I don't believe this. Within the domain of liberty, we find the path to prosperity, social peace, and human flourishing. Every limitation on the freedom of thought, action, and ownership robs the world of creativity, wealth, and progress. And yet, freedom is not baked into a world where various forms of despotism are always threatening. It must be won anew in every generation indeed. It's the ones who fancy themselves as grown-ups, able to make big decisions for the rest of humanity, who become the next generation of despots. It is the very foundation of intellectual and moral maturity to resist the level of hubris and to acknowledge the truth of our limitations. Surely maturity shows us the limits of power. Surely the cause of liberty is worth our lifelong efforts. But there is a superficial plausibility to the critics' claims because there is a tendency for libertarians to give up hope. I've known many who have lost their enthusiasm for liberty for a number of reasons, none of them strictly intellectual. People can begin to feel demoralized on discovering how little they can do to change the world. The gap between dreams and reality grows too large. Idealism fades when you sense you are hitting your head against a brick wall. What can be done to sustain the passion for liberty throughout a lifetime? Here are my suggestions for 7 habits to foster a lifelong attachment to liberty and to live life that makes the best possible contribution to human well-being. Number 1, oppose oppression, but love liberty even more. The dawning of the libertarian consciousness often takes place in 2 steps. First, you realize that there is such a thing as a state that is distinct from society at large, a fact that massive swaths of the social science, not to mention mainstream media, try to cover up. Second, there is a new awareness that the state is distinct from every other institution in society because it uses aggression or aggressive force to achieve its aims. Further, the state actually does not achieve the aims it promises. Rather, it violates rights, undermines economic achievement, fosters dependency, and serves a ruling class rather than the public at large. At this point in your intellectual journey, you realize the mainstream alternatives of left and right leave a lot to be desired. Neither is a wholly consistent application of a principled opposition to power. A new consciousness dawns. It can give rise to righteous anger. You see for the first time the difference between how the world is, which can often look dark and gloomy, and what it could be. It can be tempting to focus on the negative wars, police abuse, corruption, looting of the productive graft in politics, and so on. This anger is why so many liberty-minded news feeds consist of terrible news, but how much bad news can one person possibly handle? We have no means to directly right wrongs to change the world for the better in one fell swoop. To see evil that we cannot change can only lead to despair, a trap that too many libertarians fall into. It is crucial not only to think about the problem, but also to see the solutions being lived out all around us. We need to learn to observe the marvelous businesses starting and succeeding every day, the beauty of spontaneous human interaction, the order and prosperity that emerge from the exercise of human choice. We should thrill in the many ways that people go around their lives in casual defiance of the central plan. We can glory into the creations all around us that we never mapped out or approved by politicians or by the experts in their pay. In other words, focusing on the solutions rather than solely on the problems can brighten your day and give rise to creativity in the service of the good. Liberty is not just the absence of oppression, it is the presence of well-lived lives and institutions that emerge despite every attempt to stop them. In this sense, freedom is blossoming all over the world. If we can focus on making that positive change rather than dwelling on what's wrong with the world, our task becomes more delightful and dedication to liberty becomes more sustainable. And I want to kind of add to that. It's very important that we do exactly that, but not to ignore um, the issues with the police abuse and all that. I don't believe that the intention is to ignore this. It's to not focus strictly on the bad, but understand that there's so much good that is still going on, and we do, have a freedom, and many people do. They say that we commit so many felonies, and that how that's a bad thing because they have everybody basically in a corner, but a lot of the thing is there's things people do knowingly and don't care. How many people go 5, 10, 15 miles over the speed limit and don't care? I'm one of those people, I just don't speed that much anymore. I like as little interaction with law enforcement as possible. So I'm like the guy that's going down the street doing maybe 5 over at the max, and people are blowing by me doing like 20 over, 30 over. And I'm just amazed that they're willing to even push it to that, because that becomes potential reckless driving, according to Indiana, at least this area. So people do it all the time, and a lot of times when they're doing that, they're not causing harm, are they? Oh no. Actually, I see more accidents at low speed than I do at high speeds. And there's studies about that, and the Autobahn out of Europe. So there's a lot to that. Okay, number 2. Read broadly and be confident in your ideas. Political debates can be fun, but they can also be shrill and unproductive, with two sides battling it out and making no intellectual progress. They bring more heat than light. If you are going to change that pattern, you must have the confidence to listen carefully to other ideas and not be threatened by them. With intellectual confidence, you can respond in a way that is sure-footed rather than belligerent. You can be thoughtful rather than reactive. Think of the difference between the way a street thug behaves and how a martial arts expert carries themselves in combat. One is angry, threatening, and reckless. The other is calm, clever, and effective. In a hand-to-hand match between the two, the latter is going to win. Why? Because the martial arts expert has actual skill, whereas a bully only has attitude and emotion. Libertarians should be like skilled experts and exhibit the confidence that comes with that discipline, but becoming a black belt in liberty takes time, and learning it doesn't happen overnight. We should also know our opponent's arguments better than they do and be prepared to respond to them fairly and without caricature. Crafting our own arguments in ways that are actually persuasive rather than just forceful or loud. This requires that we spend some time reading and studying other traditions of thought. Our libraries ought to be broad and sample all disciplines and viewpoints. We should never shy away from ideas that are different from our own. Sometimes our intellectual opponents, even when they are completely wrong, are our most valued benefactors. They help us through issues, sharpen our skills, and inspire us to reach and read more. This is the way we improve this. Then we can approach debates with no fear. This approach will make us far more effective over the long term. Bombast and brombides can shut down opponents. but do they win hearts and minds? Not likely, as Ludwig von Mises emphasized in his great 1927 book, Liberalism. It is reason, good arguments, and thoughtfulness combined with a genuine desire for a better world that will carry the day. We don't want to shut down our opponents, causing them to retreat to the comfortable and familiar way of thinking. We want our opponents to ask questions of us, to keep challenging our ideas as we continue to engage them. We want them to keep talking with us and others. The ongoing discussion is a sign of curiosity and openness that we should welcome. And this is something that I personally do. It's something I've talked about on this broadcast before, is finding ways to talk to people and get their minds to open up. And one way is really just knowing your belief and being, sure-footed in, your arguments in a way that's not condescending or anything. Because I think a lot of us really came from a point where, we believe that, government is good for this, or we should vote left or right, or, we've all had a little bit of that in us at some point. But, when you understand the arguments, kind of makes it impossible for you to, believe in that anymore. Being sure-footed in your arguments, like, without police, who's going to stop the rapists? Who's going to stop the robbers? Well, they don't stop them now, do they? After the fact, they can show up to write the police report. We see a lot of instances where armed citizens have stopped criminals just as much as maybe a cop has. They should be held accountable by their peers for the abridgment of another person's rights. You don't need government, because does government really do a good job of that? Well, if we have groups running around, would they kick open the doors of people they don't like? Does government do that? Have citizens not been targeted? What about the guy that video recorded the Eric Garner death? We already have this. So, how is the government stopping that if they have a monopoly on doing that? And I've said these, and and I say, don't get me wrong, I thought, we need cops to get the rapists and all that too at one point, until, I thought about it very deeply, and it doesn't make sense when you see what happens through law enforcement. And what the argument is not for some utopia. We're saying, let's not give a group a monopoly on authority over others. Makes absolutely no sense. That's what leads to victimless crimes. You doing something to yourself can be a crime. And that's the issue. And, there's ways of going about it. Number 3, look beyond politics. For most libertarians, politics is the initial draw. There is nothing wrong with this. It is typical of American culture that it takes campaigns to get people interested in big questions like the role of human freedom, the place of the state, whether war is necessary, and so on. But it only takes 1 or 2 campaigns before people realize that politics is not a very effective way for changing the world for the better. Our votes matter very little If at all, we are mostly only voting for people, not policies, and people in politics tend to betray principles. If we put too much stock in politicians, even the best of whom confront a system much larger than they can control, we will feel frustrated and powerless. Plus, there are no nastier business on the planet. Calumnies and deceptions define the political world. Working in campaigns as a consumption good is fine. That's the sort of thing you like. Some people enjoy it, but let's be realistic. As a production good, a means of producing good outcomes, it's mostly illusion. Politics tend to be a lagging rather than leading indicator of social change. The first steps towards change are cultural and not political. Politics is reactive, not proactive. If we can make a contribution to changing minds and fostering a culture of liberty, the rest will take care of itself. There are many other ways to make a difference outside of politics. Thinking of the way the economy of mobile apps is challenging the status quo in nearly every area of commerce. Principal taxi monopolies are reeling from the competition from ride-sharing applications. Peer-to-peer housing solutions are making a mess of zoning laws. Cryptocurrency is challenging nationalized money and old-fashioned payment systems. Homeschooling and online education are busting up the state's education system. These efforts have already accomplished more than any top-down reform. Indeed, every startup enterprise is a kind of revolutionary act against the status quo that the state's regulations and plunderings have conspired to prevent. Their existence is proof that you can't stop human creativity with any amount of control. At the end of the day, we'll look back to see that startups have made a mightier contribution to liberty than all the political campaigns combined. Libertarians have long understood that bottom-up solutions to social problems work better than top-down approaches. It's the same with building a free society. Number 4, see everyone as an ideological friend. Do you know anyone who actually opposes human freedom? I don't. It's just that we all have different ways of understanding that idea and different levels of tolerance for its inconsistent application. We should see everyone as a potential ally in the great cause, regardless of sex, race, religion, or station of life. Modern democratic politics divides people by interest group affiliation. According to the prevailing ethos, women should prefer one set of politics and men another. Blacks want things one way, whites another, and Hispanics want yet another. Young and old are each opposed to the other, just as the rich and the poor. In this way, as Frederick Bastiat never tired of pointing out, politics divides people, creating a war of all against all. But the classical liberals always emphasize that freedom means a harmony of interest between all groups. Only true liberals favor the common good of all because they want to remove the major source of division in society. They favor allowing all groups and individuals to cooperate, associate, exchange, and produce to their mutual betterment. Society can manage itself better than any central planner can. To see this today in a time of Cold War between groups requires some high-minded thinking. Often it requires acknowledging the justice of victim group complaints and drawing attention to how the state has created the problem in the first place. This pertains to a huge range of problems in society, from unemployment to institutionalized racism to persistent poverty, exploitation, and war. And it is not the case that we all have different goals, it's that we disagree on the means to achieve those goals. Start all discussions with the presumption that other person is a potential lover of liberty. When someone says something right and true, seize on it and draw it out. Don't be discouraged if you don't gain a convert immediately. As with all exchanges of ideas, the goal should be to plant seeds, not harvest a crop. It is through such subtle but persistent efforts that we win over hearts and minds to the cause of liberty. Number 5, don't have all the answers. It's typical of non-libertarians that they demand full and complete answers to all human problems. And I get this a lot. You know, I might not have all the answers, but I know this doesn't work. And we should think about better answers. Says here, demand full and complete answers to all human problems that are currently tackled by status means. Who will care for the poor? Who will, how will education work? How will people get health insurance? What is to be done about the problems of racism, monogamy, and religious intolerance? Above all else, who will build the roads? Never mind, the roads are all built by private companies on contract by the state today. It is tempting to try to give complete answers, and history can provide some important hints and guides along the way to giving us a vision of what might be. There is a point to drawing attention to the way government intervention has displaced a whole range of private industries, schools, roads, mutual aid, title companies, courts, and more. At the same time, we must resist the temptation to construct a different central plan for freedom. If we take the bait, we set ourselves up for failure. We do not have all the answers. In freedom, we discover answers through an ongoing process of trial and error. An open society exists to leave the maximum amount of room for innovation and discovery. Hayek was correct in his amazing essay, The Case for Freedom. Freedom granted only when it is known beforehand that its effects will be beneficial is not freedom. If we knew how freedom would be used, the case for it would largely disappear. Our faith in freedom does not rest on the foreseeable results in particular circumstances, but on the belief that it will, on balance, release more forces for the good than for the bad. It is because we do not know how individuals will use their freedom that it is so important. And you might not know how someone will use their freedom, but after how long does it take for someone to realize how individuals will use force that is a socially accepted monopoly? And I think that that's the biggest argument. It's not, well, you know, who will stop the criminals, or who will do this, who will do that. We have to understand that we have enough history here to show that government and this monopoly on force doesn't do it. If anything, it contributes to it, and then it gets in the way of actual justice. I'm going to kind of skip a little ahead to number 6. Hack your life. Once you realize that we are living under a central plan for your life and property, you can start to get creative about finding alternatives. You can use technologies to find new approach to education. You can find better paths toward personal success. You can better manage your finances without personal debt. Encouraged by the policies of the Federal Reserve, you can hack your appliances in ways that make them operate better than the regulations allow. One way that statist lobbying groups have increased the power of government has been to find ways to apply their principles in public life. The Greens have become masters of this approach. They have constructed a whole liturgy of our lives whereby we recycle, bike, ration garbage, take short showers, and so on. Never mind that these things do next to nothing for the environment. The point is to personalize the political, the opposite of the lust principle of politicizing the personal. We libertarians can personalize the political by finding ways around the central plan. These steps are hugely important because they make liberty real in our lives. It's not just an abstraction we hold in our minds, a vague hope of some world that may or may not dawn in the future. The opportunities to live out freedom are all around us. We only need eyes to see, the courage to act. Before Anne Ryan wrote Atlas Shrugged, she knew that it was not enough to write a novel solely about a decaying social order under the iron hand of a corrupt government. She needed characters who felt empowered to do something about it. She ended up with an epic story about a whole generation of entrepreneurs who moved to Gulch Gulch to build a better world. Their plan of action, as presented in this book, has influenced libertarians for half a century. No, that doesn't mean that we must all bail out and move to New Hampshire. It does not mean we must all look for ways to live and innovate without permission from the ruling class, embracing freedom, whether our political masters like it or not. Number 7, be joyful. Factionalism is a major joy killer. There is a temptation to become overly embedded in a small circle of opinion, to look for differences, however minute, and to argue temptatiously. When debates are civil and fair, they can lead to intellectual growth. When they become personal and lead to claims that so and so is not a real libertarian, they can lead to broken friendships and general acrimony. No one wins in such joyless struggles. They cause people to lose focus on the critical goal, which is the rise of liberty and the fall of everything that stands in its way. Social media is a wonderful thing, but sometimes technology can exacerbate squabbles rather than build real community. Remember that it takes two to fight, and you can always walk away. That takes principle and humility, but it preserves relationships for our own well-being. We need to focus on building a community of ideas, not on purges based on the false hope of purifying the movement. And I've talked about this before because that plays back into the divide and conquer. If we keep attacking our differences with each other and go, he's not this and he's not that, and I'm going to show up at his studio and he's going to show up at my... screw all that. You're playing into their hands. There's something seriously wrong if drawing a libertarian consciousness leads to a dour and dreary attitude toward the world and all its works. It should be easy to adopt a joyful view of the world, especially in our times. We are seeing the failure of 20th century statist measures in every area of life. All the statist physical, monetary, and regulatory plans have all failed. Their programs are unraveling. Governments and their leaders have never been more unpopular. Commerce is making an end run around their schemes every day. These should be cause for great joy. Libertarians are on the right side of history. We celebrate and seek to defend human rights against all who take them away. This is a happy pursuit, one that gives our lives added meaning and significance. And Murray Rothbard used to say that fighting the state should be a joyful occupation. In the end, tyranny cannot work. There is just something wonderful about realizing that and seeing how it plays itself out in the real world. Having such joy was effortless for Rothbard because it was part of his personality. For the rest of us, it takes some practice. We should smile at the inevitable failures of the state, feel happy about liberty all around us, and take comfort in the hope for a future of liberty that is realizable partly through our own efforts. And FEE.org, check them out. Okay, give me a second here. I had a short clip I wanted to play here if I can find it. This from Next News Network. They put this out a day ago. It's titled, "But Will They? Hashtag Stand with Rand Paul." And many of you already know Rand Paul has officially announced that he is going to be running for president in 2016, and we'll keep an eye on the what's being called the Liberty candidates. And again, you know, this whole political thing, we don't really ever see much change, definitely at the federal level, but we'll keep you up to date on it.
Well, just a few moments ago, Rand Paul entered the presidential election cycle for 2016. He is now the second contender for the White House. A lot of people are excited for it. Of course, the Ron Paul community, his father's community that he certainly is going to be depending on, is going to have some mixed emotions. Of course, we all know what happened to his father when he ran for the White House and the media pundits that came out against him. But this time around, it looks like Rand has secured a lot of the support of the media pundits, as his last video, his teaser video that came out just a few days ago, showed us. Let's take a look at that clip.
There's probably few candidates for 2016 that are more interesting than Rand Paul.
Rand Paul has been the most consistently principled person talking about issues.
The senator for Kentucky might just be the candidate who ends up winning this thing.
He's got the organization on the ground right now. He's in all 50 states. He's got young folks gravitating towards him. He's got African Americans taking a pause and looking at it.
So there you have some of those media pundits that were vehemently against Ron Paul, his father. And now, of course, Rand has just made the announcement, so let's take a look at that.
Today begins the journey to take America back. To rescue a great country now adrift, join me as together we seek a new vision for America. Today, I announce, with God's help, with the help of liberty lovers everywhere, that I am putting myself forward as a candidate for President of the United States of America.
So now the question I pose to you is, do you stand with Rand? That is the question, and that's the hashtag. That is what people are posting all over the web. Hashtag stand with Rand. Do you stand with Rand? Now, it's no secret. I certainly supported his father for 2 presidential election cycles, and now we're going to be going into this third Paul revolution. Will it be successful? Will the Ron Paul supporters translate? That remains to be seen. And well, let me know what you think. I'm really curious. Will you stand with Rand? Leave your comments below. For the Next News Network, I'm Gary Franchi.
Okay, and we know that there's a lot of controversy around Rand and between Ron Paul supporters and Rand Paul. Not all are on board. And will he be able to win them over? Will he be able to win anybody over that has really checked out of politics? I had another one here from Jeffrey Tucker, and I'm going to go over that one because this one's about Rand. Will Rand Paul improve Liberty's prospects? It says here, and this is at tucker.liberty.me, quote, do you think supporting Rand Paul for president is good for Liberty? Here's my incredible, unsatisfying answer. I don't know. Truly, I don't. Neither do you. We can't, why can't we just admit this? And I want to read this because I really think this is important. When we've talked about this, I've talked about it on the broadcast, this whole back and forth, we don't know. In the end, we don't know. None of us know. We can only be sure of the actions, not what someone supposedly promises to you. We know that. People break contracts, and contracts don't secure anybody. So, it says here, there is something about politics that elicits in everyone a false sense of certainty, no matter how many times that political results contradict political promise. We still mostly pretend as if we know for certain that what will happen when so and so wins. We know that Jim would be better than Jane, that Joan will be better than John, and so on. How do we know? How else by what they say in the campaign, as if that is decisive? The truth is that rhetoric is not decisive. I'm not saying that all politicians are liars, even if most are. The problem is more fundamental. No single elected official has the power to change the system. The system, in fact, largely unelected. Their bureaucracies are massive. The regulations and legislation that empowers them are monumental, complex, impossible for any single mind or any one generation to comprehend. The process of reform is messy, structured so that it is highly unlikely that any change results in an overall net good for the cause of human liberty. This is why there seems to be so little relationship between promised results and actual results. Reagan was going to cut the budget. It doubled and then tripled. Bush was going to have a humble foreign policy. Instead, we went to full imperial. Obama was going to break down the prison state and empower minorities. Instead, he added the surveillance state to the existing architecture of oppression. No matter how far you look back in time, you see a massive disconnect between the platform and the policies that emerge. The presidency of FDR is the paradigmatic case. A guy who ran on frugal government and no war gave us corporate fascism and entry into the Second World War. In the post-war period, there was one slice of time where good things all happened in a bundle. Trucking, airlines, and oil prices were all deregulated. Monetary policy shifted from loose to tight. Telecommunications deregulated, was set in motion. We still benefit from these reforms today. Who was the impresario of these changes? The liberal Democrat Jimmy Carter, working in Congress through the offices of liberal Democrat Ted Kennedy, who expected that. Politics produces counterintuitive results. Under whose rule did we get the repeal of the national speed limit plus welfare reform plus a nearly balanced budget? That would be Clinton. Maybe you disagree with me. You can say as bad good as so-and-so was, the alternative would have been worse, better. Maybe, maybe not. We'll never really know, because in the world of politics and human action generally, there is no possible way to do a controlled experiment. One's personal opinion about what would have happened is as good as any other. As for Rand Paul, I have no problem granting that he believes he has figured out the right way to make America a freer place for everyone. On paper, he looks better than any other candidate so far. It's wonderful that he is accepting Bitcoin. His economic program is sound. His outreach to diverse demographics blatantly overdue. His foreign policy seems slightly better than the alternatives. But will he get his way? That is the open question. The deep state is not going to respond well to a temporary manager who swears to put it in its place. The result can be the opposite of what Rand intends. People who invest themselves in the presidency somehow never come to terms with the reality that under the democratic nation state, no man or woman is a dictator. In fact, real dictators are not even dictators. Even Nikita Khrushchev, at the height of Soviet centralized power, privately expressed nothing but frustration about his own inability to control or change the system. He once compared the system with a huge tub of dough. You punch it, squeeze it, manipulate it, but it pretty much stays the same. There's no doubt that most presidents feel the same. Clarity about presidential reality comes with realizing the first big responsibility that a president has. He or she has to appoint 800 employees subject to Senate confirmation to pretend to run the government, because lifetime bureaucrats must ignore political appointees. Where do these people come from? To get them through the process and assure no scandal, they are drawn from 1, a pool of D.C. politicos who specialize in the affairs of government, or 2, prominent and vetted supporters during the campaign, 3, big shots among the special interests that the new president favors. Immediately, all these new employees start receiving a government check and suddenly have a stake in perpetuating and even expanding the institutions for which they work. It is a particularly weird job for a libertarian to accept. To say the least, imagine to the potential downside to putting hundreds of the best libertarian minds going to work in government. Maybe some good will result, or maybe the result is a brain drain out of the productive sector into the parasitic sector. One way to think about government is a giant corporation with its own interests to better its position and power. The president is the CEO. How do you do a good job and earn the support of stockholders and customers? Not by cutting the budget, driving down the stock price, and pulling back its market share. Everything that hurts government as an institution will be resisted at all levels in every conceivable way. And you win by boosting the prospects of the state. This is why it is such an numerous, implausible effort to use the presidency to enhance liberty. Everything we know about government pushes against this. To see this reality requires that we look much more deeply at the problem than any debate or campaign can reveal. As entertaining as this season may be, we do well to keep in mind that politics is more about cosmetics than reality. Those people who say that a President Rand Paul will save us or doom us are both wrong. We are all guessing, including Rand Paul himself. Therefore, let's cool it on the saint making and witch burning and let the process play itself out. In any case, politics is most likely a lagging indicator of cultural, technological, and economic change. And in these sectors, there are very good reasons to be optimistic about liberty, regardless of whomever is ostensibly in charge. And that's from Jeffrey Tucker, tucker.liberty.me. Go check him out. Pretty good article, I believe. Now, how much time do we got here? Okay, we got 15 minutes. Let's see how long this clip was I had. Now for the load. I guess I'm having a problem here. Okay, we'll just move on to another article. It's a little too late in the broadcast to restart the browser. And the South Carolina officer has been charged with murder for shooting that suspect in the back. He was denied bail too. Okay, I was just waiting for this to load here. BenSwan.com federal judge challenges Obama's use of executive order to hide Gitmo videos. The Obama administration is invoking an executive order on classified information in order to prevent the release of videos that shows force feeding of a former detainee of Guantanamo Bay military prison. In October 2014, federal judge Gladys Kessler ruled that the Obama administration must unseal 32 videotapes related to the force feeding of Abu Wallah Dahab, who has then being held without charge at the prison, who was then being held. I probably did not pronounce his name right, so excuse me if I did. But Dahab was kidnapped by the Pakistani government in 2002 before being handed over to the United States on suspicion of terrorism. He was held for 12 years without trial. The video shows Dahab subjected to violent forced cell extraction and force feeding. The force feeding sessions began after he refused to eat. Dahab had been protesting his treatment and conditions at the prison by participating in a hunger strike, which at one point had spread to 100 detainees in the facility. The government was given time to redact portions of the video for national security reasons, and Dahab's lawyers made a proposal outlining the release of the videos. However, the Obama administration appealed on October 15th and has since attempted to argue that Executive Order 13,526, which governs the executive branch's classification of national security information, is binding on the judicial branch and precludes their unsealing. This executive order was issued on December 29, 2009, shortly after Obama came into his first term. Judge Kessler rejected this claim, stating that it would displace the court's power to seal its own record, putting that authority in the government's hands alone. She also stated the judiciary has the discretion to seal or unseal a judicial record. DeHaab's attorney argued that the judicial branch maintains power over classified court filings, and the executive branch cannot intrude by operation of executive order. Neither the district court nor this court is beholden to the executive branch to keep these videotapes wholly secret from the American public. This is not the first time Judge Kessler has challenged the Obama administration's arguments. The government had previously argued that the release of any footage of the type provides the enemy with opportunity to search for weaknesses and vulnerabilities. When President Obama attempted to seal the video, several news organizations came together in opposition of such a move, including ABC News, Associated Press, First Look Media, Guardian, McCarthy, NPR, New York Times, and Reuters. Judge Kessler sided with the organizations and Diab. Kessler called the government's arguments unacceptably vague, speculative, and plain implausible. She stated that it is our responsibility as judges, as part of our obligation under the Constitution, to ensure that any efforts to limit our First Amendment protections are scrutinized with the greatest of care, that responsibility cannot be ignored or evaded. The government has also attempted to keep the hearings away from the public eye, but once again, Judge Kessler intervened. Judge Kessler ruled that the U.S. government could not close the hearing and called the efforts by the Department of Justice deeply troubling. Even more telling is the fact that during those hearings, the government was not able to get a single witness to testify in favor of the force feeding practices. Dobb was subject to force feeding even after his health was decreasing. Kevin Costello of Fire Dog Lake writes, as lawyers highlighted in their filing and evidentiary hearing, established that the government had ordered Dobb to be force-fed even though his life was not at imminent risk from malnutrition. Medical personnel would lubricate the feeding tubes with olive oil. Not only was this a departure from standard medical practice, but it put him at risk of a rare and untreatable form of pneumonia. When Dobb was force-fed, he was strapped in a 5-point restraint chair, which caused him substantial pain. In disregard of medical staff recommendations for less painful use of a 1-point restraint. He was force-fed twice a day instead of leaving the tube in place for up to 4 weeks, which caused him... He was force-fed twice a day instead of leaving the tube in place for up to 4 weeks, which caused him needless pain. At the end of 2014, after 12 years behind bars with no trial, Dobb was finally released to Uruguay. The violence and force-feeding procedures have caused permanent damage to his health, and he is now confined to a wheelchair. So that out of benswan.com. And you know, this stuff is just this shows what happens at the federal level of politics. This is the, you know, perfect thing on it. Obama promised that, he'd shut down Gitmo. All these promises. You don't know by what these politicians say what they're actually going to do. You don't know if they're sincere or if they even have any capability of doing any type of change. Second time, well, actually third time, Ron Paul ran for president. By then, the only hope that I had of him becoming president was that it would slow down the mechanisms. They would have to be fighting him and his attempts. And that's if he made a valiant effort and he didn't have people manipulating him. And not buying him out, but manipulating what he was understanding and knowing. With Rand Paul, we don't know. Ron Paul, you don't know exactly what would have came out of that either. This Friday, one thing I do want to get into this Friday, I want to get into artificial intelligence, and some other stuff that's come out with Google and new patents that Google has gotten. And we're going to kind of get on a technology kick this Friday. I want to cover a lot of stuff with that because I'm one of those people. I'm one of the people that believes that technology is great and that it can accomplish so much. I wish I was better at it. I got a million things going on. Otherwise, I would probably be spending more time learning it. But I think technology is awesome, and it has the potential to create great things and maybe even solve some issues. But I also understand that in the wrong hands, this can also be used to hurt us. And I kind of want to get into the people behind it and everything going on with that. So plan on that for Friday, unless any breaking news kind of goes over that. I also want to tell you guys about the UCY store. Go to ucy.tv, click the UCY store tab. That's going to take you to UCY's partner store with Amazon. UCY's partner with Amazon and put together their own mix and collection of prepping gear and camping gear and all kinds of things to help you prepare for any situation or just camping, hiking. Things like the life straw, radiation protection and detection. So go check them out. And when you do that, you're getting the same great prices through Amazon, same great deals. And UCY gets a kickback, and that helps to cover UCY's operating costs and giving us, the hosts here on UCY, a great platform to get our voices out there and also for you, the audience, to get your voices out there. Always check out the chat rooms at ucy.tv. You can chat with other listeners, and sometimes the hosts are in the chat rooms too. I didn't make it in there tonight. But check them out, ucy.tv, and click the UCY store tab, and always great gear there. Another prepping gear I like is gold and silver. Go to antityrannynews.com/metal and check out Amagi Metals, and that gives us a little bit of help covering our operating costs. Stay tuned here on ucy.tv. Continual condition coming up next.
Truth on the Tracks you can catch every Monday night and Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard